I remember thinking, well, what if we could design a charity where 100% of every single donation we would ever take in would go directly to help people drink clean water?
So tell us a little bit what you guys have accomplished in 20 years, because you're...
Yeah, so I mean, we've raised over $1 billion now.
There we go. That's crazy. I had a Marlboro Red one time and it made me vomit.
Imagine doing 40 to 60 every day.
Jeez.
And on New Year's Day, 1980, she walks across the bedroom and she collapses unconscious.
Hey, it's Rich, and you're listening to the Mature Me podcast, weekly content devoted to all things life, leadership, culture, and faith. Thank you for taking some time to tune in. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Mature Me podcast. My name is Rich Wilkerson Jr. Wherever you're at in the world, we're so grateful that you're taking some time to listen, to tune in. Hey, do me a favor, if you're on YouTube right now, like, subscribe, share this content, leave us a comment. So enjoy getting all of your feedback, hearing stories really from people all over the world. I was just telling our guest, I get a chance to go and speak at places, and these days when I get done speaking, I have people come up to me saying, man, I love the Mature Me podcast. And so we want to get better around here and we want to help you get better. So your feedback helps us do that. But this is the podcast that we talk all about growing, all about becoming. The only thing more important with who you are today really is who you're becoming tomorrow. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Here, we want to mature in the Lord. That's in your life, your leadership, in all spaces. And today, I believe you're going to be encouraged. I am joined by an old friend of mine. It's funny, we don't get to see each other nearly enough, but every time we get together, we just kind of pick up on the 4 years ago that we saw each other last. Sometimes you just kind of have people in your life that maybe you don't see a lot, but you have the same spirit, the same heart. And today I'm talking about my friend, Scott Harrison. If you don't know Scott is the CEO. I don't know if you can use that language. The leader of Charity Water, which is one of the greatest organizations in the world, really changing the world. We're going to talk about it today, bringing clean water. But maybe more important than all that, in fact, definitely more important than all that, he is a child of God. He's a good son. He's an amazing husband, father of 4. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And he's been a good friend to me for almost 15 years now. So welcome to the pod, everyone.
Thanks, man.
Mr. Scott Harrison.
This is a great chance for us to catch up as well.
I know. Literally, we're like, you know what? Let's hang up now. Let's just do it on camera. By the way, you look good. You're always in ever since I've known you, you've always been mysterious, all black, simple.
It's just one outfit. It's the 26 years in Manhattan.
You just
black t-shirts, black sweater, black sweatshirt, black jeans.
You've been doing that for 16 years?
Long time.
I love the way you look.
I was out at an event the other day and I wore something that was like beige.
Yep.
And people were freaking out.
Yeah, they were freaking out.
My friends thought that something was okay. Like, is your marriage okay? Is everything okay at work? It was so jarring.
I'm going to gift you a Gianni Versace silk leopard print shirt. And I just want you to wear it to, Christmas at my house. And I'm going to photograph you. It's funny. Your wife actually thinks we look alike.
Yeah.
And some people tell us that.
She has said that. She sent a couple photos over the ages. So.
I think we look like brothers. I am your little brother. You look amazing.
Grayer.
It's good to see you. We are in a different space today. I should mention that as well. Normally, we do this podcast down in Design District at a facility that we have, or in my office at Miami Gardens, but both those spaces today were being used. And so I don't even know where we're at. We're on the second floor of our Miami Gardens building. The team did a good job. This is, what are you guys calling this now? This is like VU Studios.
VU Studios,
The concrete jungle. Do you like the space?
I like it. I was saying the floors are really cool.
The floors are
character cool. And S's running through them and cracks.
And you said, I like it because you always care about aesthetic. Unfortunate, we have a drop ceiling here.
We do have some drop panel ceilings, but you're going to fix that.
You're going to fix that. I remember
you can always kind of see the stains. There's a couple of those panels that have like the discoloration, one over there.
It doesn't matter.
The watermark right there.
It doesn't matter what you do to a room. If it has a drop ceiling, you're like, ooh, just instantly. Why did those ever become popular, do you think?
I mean, I guess it's great for sound.
Yeah.
The acoustics are pretty nice.
Can hide all the cables.
Yeah. And then, the industrial look became cool where exposed cables and wiring and duct work.
I think it was.
I think they made ducts look prettier.
Do you still have that space in New York?
We don't, but our space now outside of Nashville looks very similar.
Okay.
Industrial, giant open ducts, everything's spray painted white.
That space in New
floor
York.
is high polished, very similar.
That space
very
in New
similar
York,
aesthetic.
I walked in there, it had to have been 15 years ago, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, that was
is this?
That was kind of a part of our MO. We said, so many people expect charities to have fluorescent lit cubicles
Yeah.
and, the fuzzy cubicles and just be joyless, sterile places to work, almost like a woe is me, woe is our issue place to work. And we always wanted to look like a design studio or Apple or a creative agency that we hoped would birth greater levels of creativity and innovation.
Well, you guys have certainly done that, and you've been inspiring so many people. I'm so grateful we're getting some time to chat today. Thanks for coming on. Let's just bring the audience up to date a little bit, because no matter how I try to introduce you or describe you, I'll never, ever do it justice. Tell them who you are and what Charity Water is, and then we'll go backwards a little bit.
Well, for almost 20 years, so we're coming up on 20 years this fall, which will coincide with my 51st birthday. So for 20 years, I have been trying to bring clean water to everybody in the world. It's a very simple mission. If you ran into me 20 years ago, I would have said, Rich, I think everybody on earth should have clean water to drink. And at the time, there were 1 billion people without water. 20 years later, we're down to 700 million people. So we've actually made some progress. And we've also added 2 billion people to the world in 20 years. However, 700 million is too many people to drink dirty water every day. And, it's twice the population of the United States. So that's been the mission. And we started in New York City we really wanted to do charity differently. We'll talk about it, but I came to this through way of nightclubs as a nightclub promoter. So I really when I started, I didn't know anything about institutional philanthropy or how you're supposed to run a charity. I just talked to people my age, 30 at the time, and I realized that most of them didn't trust charities. They didn't know where their money would go. They believed in these transcendent causes or big ideas, like people shouldn't be hungry, children shouldn't be trafficked. There shouldn't be extreme poverty in the world, but they just had a hard time with some of these big organizations. And I remember thinking, well, what if we could design a charity where 100% of every single donation we would ever take in would go directly to help people drink clean water? And the way we did that is we just opened up these 2 separate bank accounts. And I said, somehow I'm going to convince people to pay for overhead, staff salaries and office rent and flights and insurance and like the toner for the Epson copy machine. But maybe millions and millions of people would raise their hand for clean water and know that every single penny, dollar, $1 million they gave would go directly to help. So that kind of was a big differentiator at the time. And then we realized early on, well, if we're not mixing the money, can't we build really cool technology to track every single donation? Couldn't we show a little girl who sold lemonade and sent $6.13 to us? Here's where your $6.13 went. This is the village in Ethiopia that's drinking clean water, and you shared it with all these other donors.
So tell us a little bit what you guys have accomplished in 20 years, because you're...
Yeah, so we've raised over $1 billion now.
There we go. That's crazy.
And that's not because we're amazing. That's thanks to the generosity of millions of supporters around the world who have given very small amounts of money, who have given every month, and then some people who have written larger checks. And we've been able to directly help now almost 22 million people.
My goodness.
In 29 countries around the world. So all throughout Africa and India and Southeast Asia. So, what we've done against the problem, it's about 1/35 of the way there. So 3.1%.
Unbelievable.
Not what we set out to do, but also I was speaking somewhere and I came off stage and they're like, well, just do 35 times more. I'm like, we're trying. Yes. Yeah, totally. We're trying.
Yeah, just 35x that.
Just 35x.
It's a lot harder than it sounds. I think even sometimes you get into those kind of numbers, raising $1 billion.
Yeah. My favorite stat is this year is actually the run rate. So every day, Charity Water gets 4,500 new people clean water. So I'll tell my team, like, you come to work and then, you sleep, even on a Saturday. Like, you didn't come to work on a Saturday, 4,500 people got water. Didn't come to work on a Sunday, 4,500 more people got clean water. So we're basically filling up a basketball stadium every, 3.5 days. I'd like to add a zero to that.
Yep.
I'd like it to be 45,000 people got clean water today. Football stadium, not a basketball stadium.
There's so many questions I have for you, especially when it comes to leadership and the way that your mind works. But I always think it's helpful for people just to kind of hear a little bit about your story. Like, what would possess you, compel you, charge you to go and give your life towards people hear that once again, and it sounds so charming, but to go and raise that kind of money, the sacrifices that you've made, something pivotal happened 20 years ago. Take us back there a little bit.
Well, I'll go back a little farther because maybe it'll make more sense. So I was born in Philadelphia, very conservative Christian family. My dad was a business guy. My mom was a writer for the newspaper. And when I was 4, we moved into this very ugly gray house at the end of a cul-de-sac in the dead of winter. And what we didn't know was that the house we had just bought and moved into had a carbon monoxide gas leak. Now, they had not yet invented the detector that you can buy in blister packs at Home Depot. So we have no idea this is going on. My dad and I are really only sleeping in the house. He's going to work. I'm going to school. Mom is 24/7 unpacking boxes. And on New Year's Day, 1980, she walks across the bedroom and she collapses unconscious. So she's the canary in the coal mine. And this leads to hospital visits, the discovery of massive amounts of carbon monoxide in her blood, and then the discovery of this furnace in the basement that was improperly installed and was just leaking this, invisible gas. You can't even smell it. So long story short, Dad and I had some health symptoms. We bounced back completely, and she never does. So she becomes an invalid for the rest of her life. She is connected to oxygen. She wears a mask for the next 45 years of her life. And what happened was her immune system irreparably shut down. So she just couldn't process chemicals. Soap would make her sick. Car fumes would make her sick. Fabric softener.
Jeez.
So she lived in kind of a smaller and smaller world in these isolation rooms, eventually living in a room covered completely in tinfoil. And she slept on an army cot that had been washed 20 times in baking soda. And there were signs everywhere on our house, keep out, chemically sensitive patient. So I wasn't able to see her. I couldn't be in the same room. I couldn't touch her. I couldn't hug her. And my dad and I really just teamed up to caregive for her. So I thought I was going to be a doctor growing up. I was very active in the church. I played in the worship band. I was that good Christian cool kid that played by all the rules. And I was going to be a doctor, and I was going to heal Mom, and then I was going to go heal other of her friends. So that was kind of chapter 1. Unfortunately, at 18, I announced to my parents that instead of becoming a doctor, I'm going to move to New York City and become a club promoter. This was not what they wanted to hear.
Sure.
And in some ways, looking back now at 50 years old, I mean, it's just this really boring cliche prodigal son story, now it's my turn to go and experience all the things that I'm not allowed to do, or the rules and the religiosity of the church suppressed. Now it's my turn. So I announced to them that I'm going to go live a big life. I'm going to become the greatest nightclub promoter New York City has ever seen. And over the next 10 years, I'm chasing that dream. And I got really good at it. I worked at 40 different nightclubs. And it was kind of the climb to the top, where it's models and celebrities and $1,000 bottles of champagne and private planes and all about who's at the club, how much money people are spending. And unfortunately, I really discontinued any interest in faith or spirituality at 18. and said, I'm going to live a very different life. And
Did you stop believing, or you were just more?
That's a great question. I don't think I did. I stopped obeying.
There you go.
I had no interest in obeying anymore because it was fun to smoke, I thought, and fun to sleep around, and fun to chase Fashion Week around the world, and fun to buy expensive clothes and drive a BMW and have a grand piano in my apartment and have a Rolex and all of these markers of success that other people had. And I just remember thinking, everything I learned growing up was like a rain on my parade. So, maybe no surprise when you smoke 2 packs of Marlboro Reds for 10 years.
Stop.
When you go to dinner at 10.
You were a cowboy.
Sometimes
Marlboro
3 packs.
Reds.
I was lucky. I went through a Lucky Strikes unfiltered phase, like awful.
I had a Marlboro Red one time when I was a teenager.
I'm an Enneagram 8, bro. So it was full on. Let's go.
I had a Marlboro Red one time, and it made me vomit. That's how hard.
Imagine doing 40 to 60 every day.
Jeez. You are the Marlboro Red cowboy.
So there was
guy.
that. Then there was the drugs. Started with the weed, and then the cocaine, and the ecstasy, and the MDMA. Then it was the gambling. Then it was the pornography.
What'd you gamble on?
Everything.
Sports?
Everything. Sports, horse racing.
Did you ever go to
casinos? I would.
Was there underground New York games and stuff that you'd play
poker, backgammon. Bro, I would gamble on anything.
Backgammon?
Anything. I got pretty good at backgammon for a while.
Maybe you haven't thought about this a long time, but when you're a club promoter, because someone's out there hearing this, 4 nights a week that you're out?
Yeah, it's 4 nights a week. But you're really out the other 2 because you're promoting the 4 nights you're working. So for 4 nights a week, you are getting paid to bring the party.
Yep.
That spends money. And it's basically bring the beautiful people.
Yep.
And then bring the spenders.
Yep.
The guys with the Amex black cards. And if you can put those 2 things together in different venues.
Yep.
You're out the nights you're not working, promoting the 4 nights you are working. So you're always out.
And you're always people pleasing.
You're always people pleasing.
You're always cultivating.
But it's even worse than that. You're not having any conversations of significance because the DJ is playing the same songs at every venue, every night.
And you're pretending that every night's the most epic night you've ever had. Right?
You're pretending it's so much fun.
This is awesome. It's like Tuesday.
And you're yelling.
Yep.
Your conversations are, leaning in and basically shouting in someone's ear.
Are you having a good time?
So it's so
Do you want
shallow.
more Belvedere?
There you go. Do you want some?
What were you guys drinking back then? What was the cool drink 30 years ago?
Actually got paid to be seen with vodka. So we would get sponsored.
Yep.
So I remember Budweiser was paying us $4,000 a month to be seen drinking Bud at our table. And Bacardi had a new vodka. It was called Turi. They paid another $4,000 a month for us to be seen. So we were like OG influencers.
Wow.
But I mean, imagine being 24 years old and getting paid $8,000 a month to drink in public.
Yep.
As an influencer, and then basically give free drinks to everybody. So I fell in love with this whole thing, and it took a while to get out of my system. And I had a really powerful moment of transformation. I was 28 years old. I remember being in Punta del Este, Uruguay, on this opulent vacation. And I think we'd flown private on somebody's jet. We'd rented this compound by the ocean that came with a yacht. My girlfriend was on the cover of Elle magazine at the time. So I'm like, I have the hottest, most famous model of anybody on the compound. And we were just doing drugs. And I remember it was New Year's Eve. We went out. I spent $1,000 on fireworks. Just this more, And this is the next thing is going to make you happy. And the next thing. And my parents, I will say, had been unbelievably faithful. They had been praying for me for 10 years. They had not cut me off. They had little old ladies in associated churches locked up in prayer closets, wearing the holes in carpets with their knees, just trying to pray this prodigal home. And my dad would always, I'll tell you a funny story. Mid-20s, my dad signs me up for on a mailing list called Models for Christ.
Oh my goodness.
He's like, maybe a Christian model will bring my son back to the Lord. And I wound up actually going to this meeting and meeting a guy who turned out to be one of my best friends in fashion later. But he would try everything.
I like that.
But at this moment, I had just gone home for Christmas, said, hey, I'm going to Uruguay. And he gives me this book called The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. Now, I have no interest in reading dense theology, but I packed it, just to not offend him. And I get to Uruguay, and I remember waking up like hungover, spinning, and just saying, there's got to be more. Like, in some ways, if I go back to the analogy, I had traveled around the world, and I found myself like in the pig pen. And even though it was beautiful, I was miserable. I was selfish. I was empty. I had done nothing for anyone else. And I start reading this book, and I just felt like I was reading the opposite experience of my life. Here was a man chasing after virtue and wisdom and the heart of God and honesty and purity. And I'm running the opposite direction. And I think there was just something so striking about, this thing that I had left 10 years ago. I kind of missed it. I wanted to find my way back home. And there was this realization that there really would never be enough. Somebody would always have a little more. A better car, a better watch, a better apartment, a more famous girlfriend. There was, and when you got there, somebody would have more. Somebody would have more. And I think I was really fortunate to just kind of have my eyes open and say, all right, God, what if I try something very different? And I remember the biblical concept of tithing, money. And I thought, what if I could tithe time? So I'd been at this for 10 years. I said, what if I gave a full year service to God, service to others, and see where that took me? And I remember coming back from that vacation changed, praying again, trying to find my way back in church, reading the Bible again. I remember reading through the New Testament and getting to, probably the overused passage in James, true religion is to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep yourself from being polluted by the world. I remember thinking, I am spectacularly 0 for 2. I have done not a single thing towards a widow and an orphan. And not only am I personally polluted, I actually pollute others for a living. Like my job is pollution. I'm in the pollution business. And I thought, what's the opposite? So I decide I am going to spend 1 year on a humanitarian mission, and I sell everything I own, and I begin to apply to the famous Christian and other charities that I've heard of. I apply to World Vision and Save the Children and Samaritan's Purse and Compassion and the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders. Scott Harrison, the great nightclub promoter, is now ready for service.
Let's go.
No one will take me. I'm denied by every single organization. I mean, they are not looking for nightclub promoters over at World Vision.
Right.
Or Doctors Without Borders, it turns out, is looking for doctors.
Yep.
Not club rats. So I just remember feeling so defeated. Here, my heart has changed. I'm ready to start a new chapter in my life, and no one will let me. And I was very fortunate because one organization wrote me back and said, Scott, if you are willing to pay us $500 a month, and if you're willing to go live in the poorest country in the world, we'll take you. And the role that they had, the volunteer role that they had, was of a photojournalist. And I was a pretty good photographer as a hobby and a pretty good writer. I'd been a journalist through high school and written for the local paper. So I apply. I remember they first looked at my application and they said, we need to meet you first. So I had to fly all the way to Europe to meet them and convince them that I was not crazy. I was not going to throw any wild parties on their humanitarian mission, and that I wanted to serve. And they took me on. And very, very quickly in the summer of that year, I went from this life of opulent nightclubs and $1,000 bottles of champagne to the poorest country in the world that had just come out of a 14-year civil war and had no electricity in the country, no running water, no sewage system, no mail. And I was going to be living on a hospital ship with a group of doctors who all came from 40 countries. And they were there to pick up the pieces.
Where were you?
Monrovia, Liberia.
Oh my goodness.
I had never even heard of this country before.
Oh my goodness.
It's a small country in West Africa. And a famous, and unfortunately maybe infamous, warlord, Charles Taylor, had run a 14-year war using children. He armed children, he gave them drugs, and he made them fight. He had just fled the country They found him in the back of a taxi trying to escape over the Nigerian border. He was later tried in the international, in The Hague. But these doctors came in, and I remember at the time, Rich, there was no healthcare system.
Right.
There's no electricity, so the hospitals weren't functioning. And there was one doctor for every 50,000 citizens.
Stop.
Here in America, we have a doctor for every 280 of us. So one in 50,000. And I wasn't even prepared for what I saw and really the experience.
How long were you there?
I signed up for a year. I was eventually there 2 years.
You lived on a boat?
I lived on a boat on a huge 522-foot hospital ship. It was an old kind of decrepit ocean liner that had been decommissioned. The founder of this organization found it in a scrapyard,
This is crazy.
rebuilt it as a hospital ship and said, I'm going to sail this floating hospital up and down the coast of Africa.
And you essentially photographed and wrote for them?
Everything. And my third day on this mission, we are at this patient. So I learned that the first thing that happens when the ship arrives is that the people come out to see our doctors, and there's this big triage moment. And we had 1,500 available surgery slots that we could fill. And we had posted the country saying, hey, we specialize in facial tumors and blindness and cleft lips and cleft palates and flesh-eating disease and burns. Often the rebel soldiers would pour hot oil on victims to try to scar them and disfigure them. And I remember looking at these posters, this kind of casting call for sick people, and thinking, are there 1,500 people with these conditions? I'll never forget my third day on this mission. I wake up at 5 a.m. I grab my 2 Nikon D1X digital cameras. I'm so excited. I put on hospital scrubs, and I jump in this convoy of Land Rovers with the doctors and the nurses and the surgeons. And we start snaking through the city to the stadium, the football, the kind of broken down soccer stadium. And as we approach the stadium, we see over 5,000 people standing in the parking lot, waiting for us to open the doors, set up these triage stations, and then start letting people in. And that was one of the most powerful moments in my life, realizing, oh my gosh, we're going to send 3,500 sick people home without seeing a doctor. We don't have enough doctors. And I later learned many of these people had walked for more than a month. They had come from neighboring countries, some of them bringing their children, holding their children's hands on a 30-day walk from Cote d'Ivoire, from Sierra Leone, from Guinea. We didn't have enough doctors. They were too far back in the line.
That's crazy. That will mark you and shape you and change you. As you were doing that, like, you just felt compelled to stay longer and longer? Because you signed up for a year?
I mean, I loved it. So I got to that first. I remember that first day. I went in the corner of the stadium, and I just kind of broke down. I never seen anything like this. The mass of human suffering and deformity, and fear, and sadness. It was a lot. And one of the doctors came over, and he said something like, "Bro, I heard you were from New York. I thought you guys were tougher than this. Get back in there, do your job.
Stop.
Because today you're going to photograph 1,500 deformed people for the medical library. That's your job." And he said very kindly, focus on the hope.
Yep.
Focus on the 1,500 people who we are going to deliver life-saving medical care to. And I remember that first little boy, I had a sheet hung and a little camera on a tripod, and I was setting him up on this white sheet for the medical library, and his name was Alfred. He was 14, and he had a 6-pound tumor the size of a volleyball coming out of his mouth. And he was suffocating to death on his own face, and he was terrified. His mom had gotten him there 3 days early, like front of line, like to make sure her kid was going to be seen. And I realized, like, we're going to help this kid. And a couple days later, after going through all 1,500 patients and seeing much worse than that, actually, I remember scrubbing up and documenting this 8.5-hour surgery where they removed the tumor, they put his face back together, And then the next couple of weeks, I got to watch him heal in the hospital ward. And then I got to take him home to his village and watch hundreds of people, pour out of this village welcoming this little boy who they had written off for dead, cursed, welcomed back with a normal face.
How do you feel like when you go back to those stories, what do you think was transpiring inside of you? What was taking place? Like, how does that even, you obviously carry these stories to this day.
Yeah.
How was it transforming you?
I mean, there was a before and an after.
Yeah.
And it was so clear, the transformation that had happened, the medical transformation. I remember a 25-year-old woman came in with cataracts, and you could see there were these cloudy white cataracts in her eyes. And she was younger than me. And I remember documenting the surgery, and it was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was like slit, pulled in tweezers, pulled out the cataract, stuck in a new lens. I'm like, I could freaking do this surgery. Watching it once, it felt so simple. And the next day, then they send him out with the bandages so she can't see anything. And the next day, I was in the room with the nurse when she removes the bandages. And I remember I was just going click, click, click. And she started screaming. She could see. And she tackled me, and she tackled the nurse. And what I learned about her story is she actually had gone blind at 15. So she had sight, lost sight, exposure to the equatorial sun, no UV protection, and she was susceptible to this. She'd never seen her daughter. And because of a couple $100 surgery in 20 minutes, her life was transformed. So I got to see a version of that 1,500 times. That year ended, and I just said, I want more of it. I don't know what's next, but I don't want to go back to the clubs.
Yep.
So I'll just keep taking pictures. And the cool thing was there was a little bit of a redemption moment because I had a big email list. Back then, email was a thing.
Yeah.
Actually, back then, email was such a thing. When you sent out an email, 100% of people opened the email and read it. Okay, this dates me a little bit. Email rates,
now
open
3%.
rates were like, not even
crazy.
0.3% maybe. So everybody
You had
who'd
a network of people that
everybody
you
that had come to my club, I was trying to capture their email address to invite them to the Prada party, the Cosmopolitan magazine party, Perry Farrell's DJing the MTV party, whatever the thing was. This dates me as well, Rich.
No, I love it, brother.
Jane's Edition.
Of course.
Yeah, he was a great DJ. He was a great DJ. So if you're on my list, you go from 10 years of hearing from me about nightclubs to getting a picture of Alfred and his tumor, and then Alfred post-op, or this woman blind, and then this woman at the moment that she can see. So there were certainly some unsubscribes. Yeah. And some people were like, friggin' take me off this list. This is gross. I don't want anything to do with that. But then the list began to grow because people would forward these stories. Do you remember that guy, Scott? Were we doing coke with him 3 weeks ago? He's on some hospital ship in Liberia. Where's Liberia? People were fascinated.
Absolutely.
And then they began to send money. So I learned that the skill that I had maybe developed was promoting. I'd just been promoting the wrong thing.
There you go.
I've been telling the wrong story. I've been telling the story that if you get past the velvet rope, if you sit with a pretty boy or a pretty girl inside my club and you spend a couple $1,000s on booze, your life has profound meaning. You made it. And I could tell a different story. Look at the compassionate work of these doctors who have left their families for a month, for 3 months, and they are using their hands, they're using their skills in the service of others without pay, getting nothing in return. Do you want to join them? Do you want to make more of that work possible? So I learned I was a pretty effective promoter for this cause. And in the second year, I did more of that, but I also saw for the first time people drink dirty water. And I remember going into a village and seeing a child walk up to a green, foul swamp, like a pond with scum in it, and drink. And I realized that was the only source of water in that village. And then I kind of zoomed back, because I'd been on the ship in the medical theater. I kind of zoomed back and learned half the country is drinking water like that. So 50% of the country is drinking diseased, poisonous, dirty water. And half of the disease in the country, according to the World Health Organization, is waterborne. So in the second year, I have my aha moment saying, well, more people are turning up than we can help.
Yep.
We don't have enough doctors, but there's millions of people drinking dirty water. How come no one is working on the dirty water? The most basic need for human health. How come no one is emptying out half of the hospital beds in this country by just getting people clean water? And I think there was something in contrast to my nightlife water experience. I used to sell Voss specifically for $10 a bottle to people who wouldn't even open the water. They'd come and order 20 bottles, let $200 of water sit there, and then drink champagne or vodka instead. So it was that second year that I felt like I had discovered the root cause of so much of this unnecessary sickness. And I came back to New York thinking maybe this is the thing that I should work on, rather than trying to help us go from 1,500 people served to 2,000 people served. Make sure that people don't need to stand in that parking lot.
So good. I love that idea because sometimes I think people think they've got a deliverance problem, and we need deliverance. We need salvation, but you also need healing. And it's like some people get delivered, but then they go right back to that thing. I think even in church life, it's like, yeah, I want you to meet Jesus and find salvation, but he didn't just come to merely take you to heaven. He came to help make you whole. And I think that we have to actually get integrated lives. And when I hear this story, it's like, we can do the surgery, but if you're going back to dirty water, it's just a matter of time before you get sick again in some other way. And so I love the idea of getting to the root of something.
Yeah.
And I love just how the Lord captures our heart. Like as you're talking, it's a powerful thing when you see someone's life get transformed and you can visibly see it yourself. That changes you. I think about like the Gospels when Jesus would show up and eyes were opened up. Like, I don't know if we sit with that long enough. Like, what would that be like? Him coming into a village and a guy who was deaf can automatically hear. I mean, they would begin to worship him. It's interesting as you're talking about that because like 1,500 doctors and 5,000 people there. There's oftentimes when Jesus was in a village and it would say all were healed. And we don't even get all those stories. Like Jesus would come in and completely turn a city upside down and people would say, I want to be a part of this mission. I think whenever we're in the hope and life business, we are in the wake zone of what Christ did for all of us. And I just love that you could go all the way to Africa and that the Lord could start to plant a seed for you to say, let's go a little bit even deeper. Not to say that what they're doing was not amazing, but water, it seems so basic. But man, you can fix somebody, but if they keep going back to dirty water, they're just going to continue to get sick. And the Lord began to plant a vision inside of you.
It's true. I mean, one of the leading causes of death in children is dehydration. And, think about it. We've got 4 kids each. If our kids get sick with diarrhea, we go and we buy Pedialyte or some version. We need to rehydrate our kids, right? So clean water and electrolytes.
Yep.
Well, the problem is in these developing nations, it's the water that gave them diarrhea in the first place. And the only way to get well is to have clean water. So the same thing that got them sick continues to kill them to death. And you have these moms who are holding their children knowing that the water they're giving them is poisoning them, but there's no other alternative. That's just where they were born. That's all that's available. And, we could talk about some of the solutions, but the crazy thing is in so many of these places, the water is 100 feet underground. It's trapped in an aquifer. There's a lake 10 stories underground, but it costs money and resources to reach it, and skilled laborers and $1 million drilling rig and equipment to access that.
When you were making this massive change in your life, how did people around you respond? Like everyone was super positive. I mean, you were in Uruguay partying with all these folks. Are they going like, bro, come back to us?
When I first came back after that year, there were a lot of skeptics. People were like, he just did this to get girls. Scott's a humanitarian now. Like, freaking went to Africa to go help people. And he hasn't really changed. The longer I stuck at it, the more people dropped, I guess, they saw me as really changed. I also didn't come back. I never touched drugs again. I never set foot in a strip club. I never looked at a pornographic image again. I really had like this, God, I'm going to give everything to you. And I wanted the transformation. I really wanted to be clean.
Yeah.
I wanted this kind of purity. And it's funny because my mom like lived in this pure environment, so my whole life growing up was like, stay pure, like don't let any of the toxins in. And then for 10 years, I'm like, let all the toxins in, give me everyone, give me all of it. And I think I wanted, in some ways I felt like at 28, I had been given a new set of clothes, like clean clothes. And when I came back to New York, I didn't want to get them dirty.
Wow. It's a beautiful picture.
I wanted to, and I knew that there would be grace and forgiveness. I could take them to the dry cleaners or throw them in the wash, but it was like I didn't want to soil the new set of clothes. The other thing that I'd say was really important for me in making the big life change was my environment and my community change. I don't know that I would have been able to wake up and say, okay, I'm interested in faith again, and then still hung out with the people. I don't imagine myself as the guy that just says, nope, I'm done with smoking, done drinking, done gambling, not interested in girls anymore. I'm just going to sit here and do the same thing. I don't think I would have been that strong. So changing the environment was so helpful for me. When you're on a hospital ship with Christian doctors, nobody's smoking, bro.
Yeah,
nobody's doing lines of coke in the bathroom on the hospital
blackjack
ship
in there.
So, and I wanted to be in that wholesome environment. People were talking about like how they bring the best of themselves to serve others. So it was way more of an inspiring, wholesome. It was a great environment.
Was there anybody that came around you from like a mentor standpoint or someone that you leaned into to kind of help keep you accountable? Because it is such a drastic change. And right back to it, it's like we can have these epiphany revelation moments, but if we don't put some discipline around it, some healing towards some of these areas, oftentimes people find themselves going backwards. I think the fact that you change your environment, that you're on a boat, you actually are busy on mission doing something purposeful.
Yeah. Being back in New York was interesting because I was actually when I started fundraising for Charity Water, or even for Mercy Ships, I went back into the clubs. So you have this kind of jarring, like this is my old life, but I'm on a new mission in my old life. But I know the DJ. So I'm up in the DJ booth with my laptop open and I'm showing him pictures, and he's like, bro, you're killing my buzz. I'll give you money, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'll just give you money, but can you get out of the DJ booth because you're not fun anymore? So there definitely was
tension.
There was a tension there. But I just think the stakes were so high. I didn't want to ruin what I had. It was a better life. And I had played that life out for a decade. So I had fully exhausted played every vice to the final end. And I think I just had enough perspective to know I've got something better and I want to keep it.
Something better, something bigger. I really think that when like God gives you vision or mission, you're not pushing it, it's pulling you. Like I like that, like thinking of it, like it's pulling me into the light. It's pulling me into purpose. And people often are like, what's my calling? I think calling, when it's done right, it usually comes and finds you. I don't think you were looking for that. I think you were going, let me go serve, and that thing came and found you. You moved back to New York. Help me a little bit. Just I like these origin story stuff. Like, how do you name it Charity Water?
Yeah.
How do you get this idea? Because I want to get into some of the leadership stuff too. We got people that are listening to this. It's like, I think that you're a genius leader. I think you're a great marketer, storyteller is probably a better word. But help me like on those early days, what you remember. Like you had this email list. I think that's fascinating.
Okay. Well, so 2 years on the ship. First year is all medical. Second year, I learn about water and think like maybe that's the thing that I should do. I did have a mentor on the ship. And at the end of the second year, he was hearing me talk about water and he said, I think this is the thing that you should go do. Why don't you go back to New York and why don't you bring everybody clean water in the world? I'm like, great. Okay. Like that sounds like a good idea. What a good mission. Clean water for every human alive, like the world. So I come back to New York. Now I am broke. So I will set like the scene, day one of Charity Water. First of all, nightclub promoters are not great at saving money.
Right.
Whatever we make, we spend a little more.
Yep.
To keep up the appearance of this lifestyle.
Get the premium Ciroc.
So anything I had given to Mercy Ships. I had given to the people I'd met in Africa. I do remember having this moment, my last day in Africa on the Mercy Ship. I went to go visit a patient who had a huge transformation, a woman with a massive tumor. She was back in her home and they were worried about food. And I went to the market and I bought a giant bag of rice that was food for a month for $16. Fly back. land at JFK, texting my friends. They're like, we're all on the roof of the Soho House. Come meet us. And I remember dropping my bags. Somebody had given me a place in the meatpacking district and for like a couple of days. And I go up to the Soho House and someone buys me a margarita. And it was $16 without tax and tip. And I hate like the cliches, but like that was probably as close to culture shock as $16, food for four for a month, or like a well drink, not even top shelf. So I think I had this moment where I said, I could be angry about that, or I could look at the $16 cocktail as opportunity. Because if you've got $16 to spend on a cocktail, you also have $16 that you could spend to feed a family for a month, or to build a well, or to give somebody clean water. So that was a really conscious decision. And I think so many people that I've met that are in the nonprofit world or that run a charity, they eventually develop this chip on their shoulder. They're around rich people. The rich people are never giving enough, not generous enough. How can you drive that car when people are dying? They get so involved in their own mission that they're not fun to hang out with. Like nobody wants to be with them. There's no winsome joy. And I just made that decision 20 years ago and said, I'm never going to shame anybody. I'm not going to make them feel bad for their money. I was one of those people who was lavishly spending without a care. I just need to give them another idea. I need to make the bag of rice.
I love that.
As compelling as the 60, in the same way the Soho House is marketing a $16 margarita is like something you should do.
Yep.
I need to market the generosity and the act of giving in parallel.
It's great.
And maybe even have a better story.
It's great. So you're back there.
So I have no money. My old club partner takes me in and he says I could sleep on his closet floor for free for a couple months.
Nice.
So it was a great location. I'm in Spring and Mercer. I'm in the heart of Soho. And I'm literally sleeping like around his clothes. Like I would kind of go in and I would part the clothes and it was a carpeted floor. And I've got free rent. And I'm running around telling everybody I'm going to bring clean water to everybody in the world. That's my mission before I die. And then I learned, okay, you're going to have to start a charity to do this. And you're going to need money to do this. So do you remember those dummies books?
Yes.
Like nonprofits for
of
dummies.
Course.
So, I got a version
I
got a version of that. Like, okay, you're going to need a board and lawyers and you have to file with the IRS and it's a 501c3.
What year is this?
This is 2006.
Wow.
So I learn all this stuff and I file and I just start raising money. I just start going out there and saying $40, you can give one person clean water. $10,000, you can help a whole village.
How are you come up with those metrics back then? You had figured out what?
I had met a couple well drillers.
Okay.
And I had how much does it cost? And whatever they told me it cost, I would go out and raise.
Okay.
And the advantage, I do want to talk about the model because the advantage I had was I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything about institutional philanthropy. I didn't know what a charity's supposed to act like or behave or how it should be structured. I was talking to my friends who worked at MTV or Sephora or Chase Bank and I learned that they didn't trust charities. They loved big ideas, didn't trust charities.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what if we could promise that 100% of your money would go directly?
How soon did you realize that though? Year one?
Early on, like day one.
Oh, okay.
I set it up and I said, I have an idea.
Okay.
We're going to have two separate bank accounts. Somehow I'm going to convince people to pay for the overhead, those unsexy costs, staff salaries, office, rent. But 100% of the people that give to this mission of clean water, every penny, every dollar will go directly to build a water project. And then I just almost stumbled into this, Rich, said, well, if we're not stepping on their money, can't I build technology that tracks these dollars and show them where their money went? And that was nobody was doing any of this at the time. Charities would ask people for money, put it all in one big pot, and then ask them for more money, put it all in one big pot. We were saying, I'm asking you for money. I'll use 100% of it to help humans get water. And then I will track it and show you the satellite image of that water project on Google Earth. And you can zoom in and see where your money went in Malawi or Uganda or Cambodia. So we started building this crude but early technology that would just track donations. And you put these two things together and it just started to explode. We raised $2 million the first year, $6 million the second year, $9 million, 13, 18, 25, 35, 45.
So you started and this thing took off.
There were ups and downs for sure.
Give me a massive breakthrough moment that you remember going, whoa, I can't, like, what was like one of your first like miracles with charity water?
We had so many miracles. And let me just state for the record, we're not a religious organization at all.
Yep.
There is no religious affiliation. A small percentage of my staff would probably do what I do on a Sunday.
Yep.
This was birthed out of my faith, and I get to live out my theology through my work, but I really wanted everybody to be involved.
Sure.
I felt like if you're going to really bring clean water to everyone in the world, you need every single person to be able to align with that mission.
And it's a mission that everyone should be able to buy into, regardless of religion,
no one's told
creed.
me to stop in 20 years. I've never come off a stage and, hey Scott, bro, stop wasting your time. Let them die of bad water.
Yeah.
Let the women walk 8 hours and get raped on the way to the water hole. Like, why don't you go work at a bank? Like no one, they don't think about this as an issue necessarily that they would identify as caring about. But keep doing it. Keep doing the good work. The water guy. So at that moment, I've got these two big pieces. We're going to give away 100%. We're going to prove where the money goes. And that goes so well on the water side, but not on the overhead side.
Right.
So we have this moment 1.5 years in, and I've hired a couple people, and we don't have an office, but we have like an apartment they're working out of.
I don't have.
This is in the third million.
Okay.
So we're in year 2, and we have $881,000 in the water bank account, and that's going to go build 80 water projects or so. And in the other bank account, we're about to miss payroll, a couple weeks. And I had asked everyone that I knew that I thought could give to the overhead or the staff, and I had just tapped out. And I remember being so discouraged because I'm like, it's working, but it's not. People resonate with this idea of all their money going. And I remember, the first night, Charity Water actually started in a nightclub. So day one of Charity Water was my 31st birthday, 10 June, Meatpacking District. The club wasn't open yet. It was Fashion Week. The owner said, Scott, I'll give you the club for free. We'll give you open bar. Do your fundraiser. And it was my 31st birthday, and I put this big plexi box at the entrance of the club. And I said, if you want to come to my birthday party, you got to donate $20. And at the end, there was $15,000 of cash, which built our very first well. But I remember that night, there was a weed dealer. He was kind of famous in the nightclub business. And he put a wad of $500 cash. And he said, this is the first charitable gift I have ever made in my life. But I know that this is going to help somebody. And I remember just thinking, like, we're on to something. So we were on to something, and people loved that bank account. So we get to this moment where I'm like, well, we're going to miss payroll. The advice I was getting was go borrow from the $881,000, write a little IOU, money's fungible, you'll pay it back later. And I remember just thinking, if we take 1 penny of the public's money and use it for overhead, there's a crack in the integrity, of the foundation of this thing. I don't want to work at this thing. Nobody else is going to want to work at this thing. We won't be proud of it. So I should just shut it down. So I start calling lawyers on how to shut Charity Water down because this model is unsustainable. And, I remember vividly praying with no faith, like praying for a miracle, but like, we're not going to get a miracle. I'm shutting this thing down. And at that moment, there was, I'd written a cold email like 6 months prior to somebody in social media about an idea. And they wrote back and said, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can we come by the office? And the company that they were building, they had just sold. They weren't running it anymore. So my idea was kind of dead in the water. But they sat with me in that office. And I remember just being honest about it's working, but it's not. And this guy, Michael, said, well, let me think about it. And a couple of days later, just after midnight, I remember I was working, I was stressing. I think I'd given up praying at this point for that. And I get this email, and he says, hey, it was great meeting you. I just wired $1 million into your overhead account. Keep up the great work. And I remember logging on to TD Bank, and I saw it 1,000,000. It was a year of funding. We went from a couple weeks to a year, and enough time to kind of figure out the business model and figure out, well, if I could get one guy to give $1 million for overhead, surely there were others. And so we've had so many of those moments, Rich, of just kind of on the precipice and then something amazing happens.
And you were on the verge of shutting it down.
I was on the verge of shutting it down. So there would be no charity water today. Interesting, like this guy was not a person of faith, kind of self-proclaimed atheist. So,
Jeez.
And now, eventually, I mean, today he's given over $23 million with his family.
Goodness.
He and his kids have been with me 11 times to 12 countries.
Oh my goodness.
So they've become, unbelievable family friends, and, we do different things on a Sunday.
How did you?
We were committed to this mission.
If you've been down too long, stand up and praise the Lord. Wake up the lion inside of your lungs.
Do you know the point of the church is to be an embassy of heaven? What we need are snippets of heaven on earth.
The God of the universe calls you a friend. You're a friend of the Most High God.
The blood of Jesus is a red line through your fear. Fear gone. Shame gone. Insecurity gone. My past is gone.
There is an eternity that awaits all of us. That you were born to live.
How did you get the
Together.
name Charity Water? Do you remember landing on that?
I didn't have any better ideas.
Okay.
So
was there 4 other ideas though? Was it like
No, actually,
Help
there's a
water.
little more to it. So I thought
Holy
Richard
water.
Branson was awesome. So the brands that I was emulating at the time was Apple,
okay?
Nike, and Virgin. I thought Virgin was fun, whimsical. And at the time, he had done Virgin Airlines, Virgin Cola, Virgin Megastores. It was kind of the Virgin brand, and then an idea that would express that. So I said, well, really what I want to do is reinvent or reimagine charity. So it was Charity : and then water was the first initiative, but then there would be charity education, charity health, charity justice. So I was going to go all freaking Richard Branson and launch all these different initiatives and all these different organizations. And year and a half into it, I'm like, one is hard. And then what was really cool now 20 years in is that the more I've learned about water, I'm able to do almost every other thing that I thought of back then.
Wow.
A third of the world's schools don't have clean water. So we've been bringing water to schools.
Charity education.
Health. 50% of the disease in many of these countries is waterborne. So we are, instead of building hospitals or clinics, we're removing the need for people to go to hospitals and clinics by giving them the most basic need for health at their home. So justice, this is one of the main issues where kids are trafficked around water. Women suffer violence when they leave their house for too long. These walks are often 7-8 hours. Women today will spend over 200 million hours walking for water just in Africa, just today. And they come home and their husbands are upset. Where have you been all day? There's other things I need you to do.
Crazy.
So all of these other issues really come back to water at the center. So I never changed the name after that, but it was Charity : let's reimagine the whole space. And then water is this pure 100% thing. Had we ever done another, same thing, 100% would have gone to build schools or to build clinics.
I like how you started with the one thing and it kind of leans into all the things. You mentioned those like 3 big brands that people would know. As you got into the space, was there any other charities or nonprofits that really began to influence you or use as a reference point? Because you didn't know anything about boards and...
Back then it was Invisible Children.
Okay.
They were these young filmmakers who were running around Africa with cameras.
I totally remember this.
Pre-social media,
Yes,
right?
I totally remember this.
And they would email out their videos.
I interviewed those guys a long time ago.
And it was just cool and young and connected, and they would get people to sleep out in solidarity of these children who were afraid of Joseph Kony, the warlord. And they were just master storytellers. It was real. It was immediate. It wasn't like, let's make the video and then let's go edit it for a month. It was like, we made the video an hour ago. We edited it and we sent it out by satellite unit. So that was a big inspiration. I think the big charities were almost the anti-inspiration.
Yep. Because you had to disrupt a little bit and go.
The direct mail, sometimes almost the poverty porn in the advertising, the kids with the flies leaning on their face and the sad eyes. So I think Nike was a great inspiration. So look, I think often the first 3 letters in fundraising is fun. It's not guilt. It's not shame. And I think so many organizations, there's really like a woe is me, or there's a let's shame people into giving, or let's get them to give out of obligation. And I always wanted to take the opposite. I was like, man, if Nike were to try to sell shoes like that, like a traditional charity, Nike would go out and tell everybody, America, you're fat and lazy. Turn off the TV. Put away the Doritos. Go exercise. Right? And Nike took the opposite approach. They would tell these unbelievable stories of people overcoming adversity. Right? Nike believed there was an athlete in anyone. Nike believed if you had lost an arm, you could win the shot put competition with your other arm. If you were blind, you could climb Mount Everest. So there was kind of this marketing that said, greatness is within you. Go out and run half a mile. You're going to love it. And then buy our brand. So that was, I was basically really intentional about it and saying, I want to build the Nike attitude of charities. Great compassion and generosity is within you. You just haven't tapped into that yet. And let me invite you to experience the joy of giving because it's awesome. And because I could tell you that 100% of your money is going to go directly to people in need, and because I can show you, I was able to create these feedback loops that would, you wouldn't throw your hands and say, oh, where did it go? I know exactly where it went. That felt great. Let me do a little more. So I almost wanted to get people addicted to giving.
I love it.
To use that muscle and say, wow, this feels really good. Not as an ego or vanity play, but just feels really good to help other people. Feels really good. I never thought my resources could end suffering in that way. I never thought I had anything to offer. And we've tried to spread that now to millions, and that idea to millions of people who have showed up and contributed over $1 billion, giving what they can because they do feel empowered and they trust the organization, and then they can see where the money goes.
I love that proverb, the world of the generous gets larger and larger. And I don't think that necessarily means that it means you have a bigger and bigger house, but I think it means your perspective gets bigger, your relationships get bigger, your purpose grows, it increases because there's true fulfillment. As you start to live a life of generosity, it creates a life of opportunity for others around you. And I even think just like in church life, I grew up in a church oftentimes where maybe there might be, a 20-minute talk on the offering. And I just remember as a kid being like, this can't be effective. You know what I mean? Like, how many times can you read Malachi chapter 3, verse 10?
Right.
You can't read it every week.
And the heads just kind of get lower
you're just like,
and lower
I don't
and
know
lower
if
and
this
lower.
is going to be effective. And I would agree. I don't think that people should be guilted into anything. I think that's a very short-term play. People have to step into the opportunity of what it is and the privilege and what that does to your own personal life. I think serving, when you refresh others, you get refreshed.
Yeah.
And so even at church, I think from the day we started, it's like right before they ever we don't even pass a container at church. And we just every week put up a big slide that says thank you. And every week we just say, we want to thank everyone that serves and gives here at VU Church. And it's always a moment where everyone applauds. And I feel like just thanking people and then showing people the vision of what we're doing with, the dollars that they do have, it continues to build trust and equity, and people are excited to be a part of it. And there's no doubt as you're saying this makes a lot of sense to me. I love this framework that let's be the Nike of a charity and going, what's within you? What do you kind of hold on the inside that if you stepped into this,
and
how
for
your
some
life
people,
would
it's
go?
time and it's not money.
Absolutely.
And they can volunteer and they can mentor and they can use
Or
their
talent,
gifts.
whatever these things are.
We've all heard this phrase, give back. I freaking hate give back.
Tell me about it.
It makes it sound like you've taken. You've pillaged and plundered to such extent
Yep.
that you should give a few scraps back. Like, let's throw a few scraps back. And I came across this idea many years ago, actually in Dubai. It was like a hedge fund, and they had written this very simple paper. They said, just lose back and see what it does. Just giving. Build a culture of giving in your family. Build a culture of giving in your company. Giving your time, giving your money, and giving your talent because you're giving, not because you're giving back, because you're just giving.
I really like that.
And I think that's again, you could get almost addicted to giving more. There's no end to that.
Yeah.
You could actually give more than you, right? Like
Yeah.
there's,
If you give back,
it's not kind of proportional to, it's not guilt and shame based. It's joy and abundance based.
I like how intentional you are and how words matter to you. You and I were having a conversation before you got on camera just about a phrase or a thing. So I can see the detail of you as a leader. You're talking about kind of like the macro side of Charity Water, and I don't know if you use this term, but the brand of it and what it makes you feel as you're interpreting it. But then you also as a leader sit down with really powerful people, really influential people, and somehow you've figured out how to translate those same values one-on-one across a board table. What can you share that you're comfortable sharing in terms of like you looking at a guy and you're raising once again, your numbers are so large that I think it just kind of goes over people's head. Like you raised $1 billion of charity in 20 years. And
oh my gosh, but let me just say, that's a fraction of what I thought we would have done. That is an order of magnitude less.
Really?
Like I feel like an enormous failure, Rich.
Okay, you just lost me. Really?
It's water, bro. It's water. Like I should have the easiest issue. There's money everywhere.
Yeah. Jeez.
We spend $50 billion on chocolate in America. There's $400 billion sitting in donor advised funds right now. Philanthropic
Just
capital is
sitting.
just parked, and it just goes up by 10% every year. It'll be $1 trillion sitting latent
Jeez.
in charitable funds by
So
the
if you
end
ever
of,
sit
by
with a
the
guy,
end
do
of
you ever get
2030.
that? Do you ever get that fired up? Sitting
So
with a
people
guy?
are like, I have to be careful. I like to challenge people to think.
Tell us some of that. I just want
bigger.
I think there's probably some leader out there who's like,
Let me just first say that the majority of the money that Charity Water has raised is through small donations.
Okay.
It's a lot of small donations. We have about 60,000 people around the world that are a part of this community called The Spring, and they give an average of $25 a month. We have people
Beautiful.
in their 90s giving $10 a month from their pension. We have college
Beautiful.
kids giving $5 and $10 a month. That adds up to more than the big donations over time. I will say, I think sometimes people just need to be challenged. I remember having a conversation with this 70-year-old entrepreneur, awesome guy in the Midwest. And he'd offered $1 million. He was going to do $1 million and do 100 water projects in 100 communities. And at the end of the night, I just kind of said, what if you were to do 1 million people instead? Like, what if instead of giving $1 million, you were to help 1 million people? And he said, how much would that cost? And I said, that would cost $50 million. But I said, imagine helping 1 million people. It's 50 stadiums, 50 Madison Square Gardens full of people. Imagine 1 million people lined up that you gave water. And imagine you just spent a minute consecutively with each of them. And they just said, hey, water meant so much to me. It changed my family. And then you went on to the next one. If you met 1 million people that you helped and you never took a break 1 minute at a time, it'd be almost 2 years of your life, right? And he called 3 days later and said, I talked it over with my wife and my kids and I'll make a $50 million commitment. He said, I need 5 to 7 years to do it. And he figured out how he could do it through the business and through the family.
It's powerful.
And in a way, the cool thing for me is like my salary doesn't change. Like I've gotten paid the same for the last 7 years.
Yep.
So that's just another 1 million people that get clean water. There's in some ways not having any kind of upside to like the big deal or the win. I just moved money from one person to 1 million lives. And by the way, like got to involve this family in like an amazing opportunity.
You're just a promoter,
Their
man.
legacy.
You're taking the person to the party.
But I kind of want to be them. Like if I had the 50 million, I would want to help 1 million people. I would want that to be a part of my legacy. I'd want to tell my kids and my grandkids, like,
Beautiful.
I did a lot. I was successful in business. And oh, by the way, I gave 1 million people the most basic need for human life on this planet. Like the most inarguable common good. Right? So I'm kind of out there drinking my own Kool-Aid. Like,
Yep.
I think this is a cool thing to do. And, I remember early on, so I was spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley, founders of Twitter and Instagram and, early Google, just out there as these Pinterest, like as these social media companies were being built. And they would say to me every once in a while, because I felt like them in a way.
How
like
were
an
you getting into
entrepreneur.
that space? They just knew what
You'd
you were...
meet one, and then you'd meet the next. And I was inviting myself to speak, and we felt like we were tech. We were design forward. We were hiring great designers, and everybody else's website looked like this, and ours looked like this. We were the first charity to use Apple Pay in the world, back when it was the thumbprint. So we had this culture of innovation, and they wanted to help us. And I remember in the early days, they would say to me, why don't you just kind of become one of us and go build a company, make $1 billion, and then give your money away? And I remember just kind of always saying, how much have you given away? And they might have given away 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. Back at the time, I might have given, Charity Water might have raised 25 million. I'm like, I'm going to raise more than you will ever be able to give away in your lifetime. So now at $1 billion, I don't know any of those people that have given away $1 billion to charity as a mile marker. And I hope one day it's 10 billion and 50 billion and 100 billion, and that I'm able just to let the money flow through my hands, and that, I'm kind of this conduit. Like, I'm a storyteller saying, we've got a great issue. You can transform human lives. We've built a world-class, transparent organization over 20 years. I've given almost $1 million to our own organization. I believe in it too. So I'm not asking. I wrote a book, and I donated 100% of the advance and all the proceeds, and that allowed us to be huge givers to our own cause. So I'll tell people, like, I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done, and that I'm not continually doing. Like, we love building water projects.
It's really powerful. We call this Mature Me. And so I think the whole point of why we sit down and chat with people is talking about learning to grow and not forcing that, but putting ourselves in an environment, challenging ourselves. You've been leading this organization for 20 years, and the stories and the spaces that you have been to, what would you say about, like, looking back on this organization that you're leading? Like, just the pitfalls, the challenges, the obstacles of being a leader. How have you been able to see it grow year after year? Is there any, like, just things that you can think about, principles that you, like, are committed to? Like, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
You grow over time, but what are some things that you think about?
I think we're so dissatisfied with, and this can be exhausting to work, I think, for me at some point. I think we're just because the need is so great, and because the stated mission is to solve it all. You're never content with any stage. And that can be exhausting, but it can also lead to growth. Because you're asking yourself, you're thinking more asymmetrically and less incrementally. What thing could we do to catapult us to the next level, to go from helping 4,500 people a day to 45,000 people a day? So there's been this relentless pursuit of innovation, early adopting, trying new things. We just built a retail store for a charity. People said, this isn't going to work. Why are you wasting a couple $1 million? Like, it paid back in 9 months, and is turning out to be one of the maybe most innovative things that we've done. A 60-minute immersive experience where people come in, have never thought about water before, and they leave like deeply moved, and leaving their checkbooks as well. We're leaving an impact. So I think, innovation keeps us going. It's exciting to think about what is new and what tools could be adopted. I'll just give you one example. When VR first came out many years ago, I remember going to an event, and somebody put one of those headsets on me, and it was Marriott. And I was transported to the top of the Marriott suite in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. And I remember thinking, this is so cool. I'm looking around at the skyline and thinking, well, if they can do that, I can bring someone into the center of a village in Ethiopia the minute a well is drilled. And they didn't have cameras at the time. I remember getting GoPros donated, getting a guy called Chris Milk in LA to build us a rig, going out there, bootstrapping the whole thing. And we had this beautiful film that happened over 6 days where you got to see a 13-year-old girl go from dirty, disgusting, toxic water. And you were there the moment she tasted clean water for the first time in her life. And people would weep. It was so moving. And, and then we used that to raise millions and millions of dollars because it was new. And people just wanted to try on a headset. They were interested in the technology. And then we were able to deliver our redemptive story through the interest in the technology. So there's this sense of always trying to reimagine the brand, reinvent ourselves, to never get comfortable. Whatever we're raising, again, we have an abundance mentality. There's so much out there. I mean, how many $250,000 cars did I pass just in my Uber here, right? I mean, I probably passed $12 million of cars just on the highway today. So there are people that have the ability to give $10 a month and to give $10 million. And it's our job to capture their imaginations and bring them into this mission.
When you're leading an org like Charity Water, is money always the obstacle? What does it feel like on the personnel side? Are people staying there for decades working with you? Everyone has to have a calling, like you're getting the best designers. That's cool. You have to get dope designers, but then they also have to take a pay cut and they also need to care about the mission. What's been some of that in terms of trying to build the team that you can think towards?
We try, in the early days, we weren't hiring from the nonprofit sector at all. And we would take people out of Google or Twitter or Apple, and they would have to take a pay cut. And that is always a tension. We would lose people after a few years, and they're like, I went to Airbnb, they 5x'd my salary.
Totally.
Plus stock.
Totally.
Right?
We have none of those here.
So, having someone stay for 10 or 15 years isn't actually a goal. It's, can they come and make a valuable contribution for the time that they're here? Can we give them the tools to make them effective? And the good news is, we're a small team. We're only 120 people here. Around the world, we're over 5,000 through our partners who are out there taking the money and building the water project. So we scale through local jobs in Ethiopia and Malawi and India and Laos or Cambodia. And we try to keep a pretty lean team here.
It's cool.
We had 16,000 people apply for 20 jobs last year. So there are people who want to work at a purpose-driven organization and are willing to take a living wage. And we try to pay above other nonprofits, but again, we can't compete with tech or AI or these crazy salaries.
As you shifted into Nashville, talk about how that's been beneficial and why that was good in this season.
Yeah, I mean, we went fully remote in COVID. So our team scattered to 31 states. And in some ways, it really helped with retention because in keeping people happy in New York City, it's like one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yeah.
So when people moved to Des Moines, they're like, I'm freaking rich.
Totally.
And we didn't change anybody's salaries downwards. So people got to reduce their cost in living by half. I think, look, there's a tension with culture. Some work is just done in person a lot better. So we've actually moved our full creative team to Nashville to work in person. So we're rebuilding that team locally. A lot of the marketing. Our water programs team is flying around the world to 20-some countries. So they're on the road, in the field. If you're working on fundraising, you should be out in Austin and Portland and in Oklahoma meeting with donors, updating them on their gifts, building those relationships. Finance and engineering work really well remotely. So it's really kind of reestablishing the creative hub really around this retail place. We're calling it the Experience Lab. So it's also a big petri dish for us. We've had 9,000 people come through and take these tours. Wow. So we're trying new things on them. We're showing them new videos, new messaging, and then hoping to take that to the masses.
So cool.
So our creative team is literally built around that space.
In those 20 years, you got married and you've had 4 kids. But you're a dad right now, and you and I both have 4 kids, so we're both trying to keep up with this a little bit. Tell me what you're learning in that space and what it's like for you being a dad.
Well, I love being a dad. And we had 2 kids in New York City. We thought we were done. And then we had a third, and we thought we were done. And then I turned 50 and had a 4th. Now we're really done, Rich.
I thought I was allowed having one at 40, but you like to 10X me. You like to
50, and I've got a 4-month-old and a 2-year-old. I have 2 in diapers right now. One is half in diapers, so we're getting there. I love being a dad. I love taking my kids with me. I was an only child growing up. My wife was an only child, and it's just so cool to see siblings and give these kids the experience. I've taken my older kids to Africa a couple times now. They were in Madagascar and Uganda and South Africa with me. They're walking for water. I'll take them to conferences. They'll see me speak at a church or speak at the MGM Grand, to 10,000 people, at a tech conference. So they're kind of involved in this life, this thing that we do as a family. They get it. I go and speak at their schools, and like at career day, like dad comes in with like his 850 pictures from Africa. And I love being a dad. I love, I think I'm over optimizing for fun sometimes. I think maybe because my childhood didn't feel fun.
Sure.
There's a lot of roller coasters and ATVs.
I like that.
I'm more of an Enneagram 7 when I'm around my kids because I want to show them that you can serve God, you can live a life of virtue and integrity, and you can have a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
That doesn't require the darkness. Where I looked for fun was really in all the wrong places. And I think I want any of those vices to pale in comparison to the big experiences of travel or meeting new people or serving, of being generous that I'm hoping to give them.
How soon would you have been showing your children like this, dire poverty that we're looking at? And when would you begin?
I started at 5.
There we go.
Yeah, 5. They came to Africa at 5.
5 years of age.
They're running around villages and, and you have these interesting conversations because you take your kids into a village and they say, well, where's the refrigerator? There's not one.
There's not one.
Where's the roof? It's just this grass. And then you get to have the conversation, well, why does everybody seem so happy? They're not on phones. They're not on devices. There's a sense of community. So I think that's really helpful to sometimes have that counterpoint, where we all walk around,
totally
staring at these glowing devices, and you could argue are maybe less happy because someone's always showing us something a little better, a little happier, and they get to travel the world, and people, without the things, are smiling and are giving whatever they have and are generous.
My dad, I didn't grow up in by any means a super wealthy family. We had everything we ever needed, but my dad was really big on giving us experiences and taking us places with him. Yeah. And I think that's such a great gift that we can give to our children, is just giving them the gift of perspective, understanding that it's not the stuff or the things that can bring joy or happiness. Because you can go to some of these places that you've been into extreme poverty and find the most joyful people in the world. And once again, I think that when we go and serve, hopefully we're meeting some needs, but what we always discover in the serving, in the giving, is that there's needs inside of us that are being met of fulfillment and real purpose. And I want my kids to have those as well. I just loved being around your kids. I love seeing you be a dad. There's so much for me to learn from you in those categories. But I think you're carrying so many different spaces of weight. What would you say to the people out there that are watching right now when it comes to growing your capacity, when it comes to trying to balance? I don't love that word, but I think it resonates with people.
I think there's seasons. In the early days, it was 100 hours a week. There was no Netflix and chill. Like, we weren't going to the movies. We were existentially trying to keep the organization from dying at any given moment. So those early startup days,
do whatever it takes.
Leave the office at a Saturday at midnight and come back on a Sunday at 7, and like you're just grinding, and then you go to church and you come back to the office. And this is a season where I'm picking up my kids from school almost every day that I can, and designing my schedule when I'm not on the road. I'm working a whole lot less than I used to, and I'm delegating a lot more. And I'm trying to, work differently. I could take 10 meetings, or I could take 1 meeting, if that 1 meeting is, as valuable as 10 or 100. So I'm really trying to value time with my wife, with family. I want to be, I don't want my kids ever. There was a very famous humanitarian. He started a multi-billion-dollar organization that is very famous and has helped hundreds of millions of children around the world. And his daughter committed suicide and said in her suicide note, my dad was there for millions of other kids, but never for me. And I remember reading that 20-some years ago and thinking, I'll never make that choice. I never want my kids to say, oh, dad's running around, meeting presidents and prime ministers and speaking on stages and, running around Africa, hosting people, and wasn't there to coach Little League. So I say no to a lot. I say no to a huge amount of travel and opportunity now that would have been 100% yeses pre-kids.
Yep.
I was doing almost 100 flights a year, every single year, just out And I'm okay with that. And I am sacrificing growth for that. So that is the tension. You know, if I jump on a plane to Singapore, I know that it's 2 days to get there, and then it's a day of meetings and a day to get back. I know that I'm going to move the mission forward in a more substantial way. But that's 4 days that I'm not with my family. And I'm saying no to a lot more of that these days.
I think
Also trying to play the long game.
absolutely. I mean, I feel the same. I mean, I traveled every week for years and years, and just kids change all of that for me. It's
Also,
like I
feel older, bro. I mean,
my goodness.
flying in coach is terrible. You know,
37B,
Charity Water,
man, hits hard, bro.
It's funny because it's been a thing. Like I fly coach. I don't use donor dollars to upgrade. I haven't done that in 20 years. And people sometimes, I used to get mistaken for a couple other celebrities, and I'd be in like 56H, and I'm like, do you think he'd be sitting in 56H in a middle seat? It's like, no, that guy flies at the front.
There you go.
Not him.
Not here in second class.
So yeah, I think we both want to finish well. We want to also stay healthy and play the long game. I now have the benefit of time. I've seen so many seeds that were sown 10 years ago, 15 years ago come to pass, but it took a decade.
Yeah, very good.
Where that thing, there was no fruit, there was no result from that meeting, that speech. And then 10 years later, something amazing happens because I'm still going.
Yep.
And we're still doing it. We're still stewarding the organization, and we can take in that gift. So I'm kind of hopeful that, over the next 10 years, 50 to 60, Charity Water 20 to 30 years, there's some of this stuff that we laid the groundwork for that will really come to,
I think you've done 20 years of foundational work that you're seeing fruit for, but I really believe that harvest is far greater. I just saw this guy talking the other day, and it's like the best age for to become an entrepreneur, like for your best entrepreneurial work. And most people think like, oh, it's in your 20s because you're like, more risk adverse. Like let's go take a risk. And that's true. But they actually have like pinpointed that 45.
45, there you go.
Because it's actually this network that you've created, this experience that you have that as you're beginning and starting something. And what's really cool to think is that you're just, 5 years over that age, and I think your best years are in front of you. What does it look like to be in your 50s now and have already accomplished so much to continue to dream or to innovate? Like, is that as easy as it used to be for you? Like,
it is, because again, there's just this sense of like, we haven't done enough. There's so much more available. There's so much more that's possible. And I think I have a personal goal of helping 100 million people. And we've only helped 21.6 million. So the 100 million feels achievable, but only 21% to goal. Like, I want to see the whole problem solved, but I want to make sure before I die that I've helped transform the lives of at least 100 million humans. With clean water. And we have, if we keep going, we will. So I think that's a milestone that feels it's enough ahead.
Yep.
We can't incrementalize our way there. We will need to discover new things to be true that we haven't even discovered today. But that's a long ways off too.
It is a long ways off.
I
think it's important because people that are listening to you right now, I think you have to keep yourself and put yourself in places of pressure. It's important to have a goal, to keep vision in front of you, because it's the pressure that pushes on you a little bit that produces a new idea or a God idea or to innovate. I love the fact that you are trying something new with that space in Nashville. Like, I think we have to kind of stay in that hungry spot. We can grow to a point that we get comfortable, but comfort doesn't create very much. I like the idea that, comfort has everything but your calling usually. Like it's usually always on the outside of that. And so the fact that you still put yourself in a position to say, hey, I want to try to see in my lifetime 100 million people helped. We can do it, but we've only gotten 21 million. We got some work to do.
Yeah.
We need some things to expedite. We need some things to scale. We need some things to move faster. But there's other ideas. There's other trees we got to shake a little bit.
And that's so animating.
Yeah.
Like that's exciting.
It's very exciting.
I get out of bed for that. And like, how do we get the next 80 million people? And then once we get to 100 million, it's like, all right, how many people are left? There's only 180 million people left. Let's go get them all. Right? So and I think the biggest challenge, maybe the thing that keeps me up at night, is no one comes to us because no one has experienced the problem. I'm going to bet 99.9% of the people watching or listening to this have never had to drink dirty water in their life, have never had to walk 8 hours to a swamp or a river, have never lost a child of diarrhea. And, we have, and in an age of more distraction and more chaos and more noise, it's harder to break through. We'll spend $50 billion on medical research in America this year. And that makes sense because everybody here listening has been touched by cancer, either personally or a family member or certainly a friend or a loved one or a coworker, right? So when we're raising money for leukemia research or for pancreatic cancer, which eventually took the life of my mom, we're connected to those causes. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
Yeah.
We know people with these diseases. We don't know people who are drinking dirty water, who are dying from dirty water. So that is kind of the existential challenge, is how do we get people to care? Once we get people to understand this issue, 100 out of 100 people are going to nod their heads and say, yeah, people should have water. Like, people should have water. It's hard to imagine a person thriving if they're poisoning themselves every day with dirty water, if they're walking to a dirty water source. So it just takes a little bit of time, and no one comes looking for us. Yeah. No one. No one woke up this morning. I'm going to guarantee no one listening or watching this podcast woke up this morning, walked over to your refrigerator, pressed the lever, and got your filtered water, brushed your teeth, took the long shower, maybe grabbed your reusable bottle on the way to the gym or the yoga studio and said, man, I'm so grateful for this clean water that has been a part of my life since birth. Let me go find a great organization that provides clean water to the 700 million people in the world that have never had it. Let me go Google, right? Like, no one comes to us, bro. No one. We have to go to them. We have to interrupt people. We have to bring this issue and then invite them in a compelling way to give, to help, to contribute.
I love that Jesus' words are the Great Commission, that we're to go out. And I think there's something about proximity to pain, that when you're close to pain, you're going to see things, hear things, feel things that you otherwise would not. And even going all the way back to the beginning of this story of you being out on that boat, leaving your natural environment and going into this other space, it gave you proximity towards you seeing something and feeling something and a burden coming over you. I think it's a holy burden that God's given you. And you're absolutely right. It's like your work is cut out for you because most people don't even think about the problem. Most people, it never has touched them, and they're living in their own space of comfort. And so I want to encourage anyone that's listening right now that as you're even listening to this conversation, like, go and see what Charity Water is doing, being a part of it. Like, maybe
check out The Spring. We made a video that's gotten like 130 million views. If you go to thespring.com, it's a great way to kind of see the visuals and then share it too. There's still, I'm sure there's tons of people that are like, I've never heard of this organization and never really thought of this issue. We don't have the marketing dollars based on our 100% model, so word of mouth has been so important to us.
I want to take a step further. If you're listening right now, you've got the ability to participate in being a part of the Spring and giving something on a monthly basis, even just beginning right there to participate, be a part of the solution rather than just absolutely living in apathy. Maybe you've never been to Ethiopia or one of these places or some spot in Africa, but even just with your dollars and your resources, you can actually be a part of something bigger than yourself, something that's the solution. I think it's
and whatever the issue is, I mean, you mentioned apathy. I think it is so easy to embrace apathy with any paralyzing
Look, he's already going back into who Charity Water is. He's not going to let me use guilt, but yes.
But I love that. That is the natural position. Like, what could I do about sex trafficking? What could I do about global hunger? What could I do about homelessness in America? And the easiest thing is just to kind of embrace a paralyzing apathy. But I would encourage people, like, just do something. Like, it's really cool in your local community, in the global community. It really matters.
Absolutely.
And it's, I think people are almost surprised in how such a small action can actually end suffering. And that to me, I think is the, somebody sent me a picture from a New York City deli billboard 20 years ago. And it was from an ancient rabbinic text, and it said, "Do not be afraid of work with no end. Do not be afraid of endless work. And I think, that idea used to kind of scare me. This idea is so big. Are we ever going to get to zero? But I think the work is service. And if you're asking yourself the question, how do I use what I've been given and look around and end needless suffering in my local community, in my church community, in the global community, there's no finish line.
Yep.
Like there's no drop the mic moment. And I would even argue that, I hope we're able to realize a day when we get everybody water. And there's this talk of like charity should put themselves out of business. And I would hope if we get everybody clean water, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we would look around at the 10 million supporters of Charity Water, the trust we have built, and say, what else could we do together?
Of course.
Are there people hungry?
Of course.
Are there people without shelter? Like, hey, y'all, what could we do, maybe using this 100% model and the trust that we've built? What other needs could we meet? What other suffering could we end? So there's really not an end point. I think of that last scene in Schindler's List, which I haven't seen in so many years.
What a movie.
And, he's just so dissatisfied with how few people he's helped. But then because he just kept showing up and helping the next one, helping the next one, and helping the next one, it was so many people. It was just scores of people that he helped. But there was this dissatisfaction. And I think that's animating and it could be tiring. It can be exhausting at times.
That's why the scripture says, don't grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest. And I actually do believe that. And I think that our job is to plant seed. Our job is to water it. It's God who brings about the increase. And I would just encourage anybody out there. I think living in apathy and doing nothing only makes the problem feel bigger and bigger. I love what Zechariah says, do not despise small beginnings, and even just starting. I think it's Andy Stanley who says, do for one.
Yeah, what you could do for many. Oh my gosh, I was there for that talk.
I mean, it's just what a beautiful thought.
I loved that.
Do for the one what you wish you could do for everyone.
And then you do it for the next one because you're like, wow, that really helps the one.
And I just
then let me find the next one and the next one.
Don't despise that small thing. And even we should just do it with a complete pure motive to help and to serve. But I'm just telling you right now that doing good feels good. Maybe that's a safe way to say it. Doing good feels good. Doing what's right feels right.
Simon Sinek said to me once, he goes, I got a phrase for you. The more you give, the more you give.
I love it.
Right? It's like this flywheel.
Of
course.
The
more you give, the more you want to give. And then you give more. And then you give more. And
I love that.
The more you keep, the more you hoard, right? The more you clench your fists and accumulate, the more you accumulate. They asked, I think it was Rockefeller or JP Morgan. I need to look this up and get this right. But it was one of the two kind of titans of the age. And he was the richest man in the world at the time. And they said, how much is enough? And he said, just a little more. Just a little more. So, I think there's a way to turn that, like how
there's
much.
A flip. There's the upside down kingdom.
How much should you give? I'd love to give a little more.
We just had our staff the other day watch, it's on Disney. It's the documentary of Walt Disney building Disneyland. I think it's called.
It's so good.
What was that called? Handcrafted?
So good. Okay, I've seen the 5-part PBS special.
No, I haven't seen. I've heard about that one. This is just on Disney. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. It's called Handcrafted. Disneyland, was built in one freaking year, and it's just crazy.
Yep. Inspired by Tivoli in Denmark, and
it is gnarly. I mean, like they don't have plans when they were out there. You could never do it this way today, but there was this joke and there was this statement. I love that kind of stuff too, because no one's like speaking in sound bites. They're just kind of sharing their story, and you find the gold as they trip over the truth. But, Walt kept spending money. And they have Walt, as they have him off camera talking, and people would say, Walt doesn't care about money, And Walt said, I certainly value money. And people would say that about me, but it's not true. I've just always felt that any dollar that I had, it was always going to be towards the benefit of actually spending it and using it. It brought no value just sitting somewhere. And I just think flipping that even from the space of generosity, it's like there is this idea that I just need to store up. But man, I think as we find ourselves in a perpetual place of generosity, I'm telling you, that's how we use it for good. That's how our prosperity actually has a purpose and a point. And I just found it really, really beautiful the way that he said, he's like, no, I totally value money. That's why I spend it. You know what I mean? I spend it to make things better, to grow, to make beautiful
and
things.
His story is amazing. He was bankrupt at the end of his rope so many times, and then there would be a win, and then he would take it to the edge of the precipice again, and then there would be a win. But he had this belief. He had a transcendent belief. And he really refused to be discouraged, and he was resilient and had grit, and I'm a big fan.
He's amazing. I'm so grateful you're here today. We always come to around the corner, and here's the question I love to ask people. What's one area in your life right now that you need to mature in, that you want to mature in, that you want to grow in?
I think patience. I think I am very impatient, and sometimes that can make me less relational. So I'll often call someone and jump right in, and I'm like, Rich, how you doing? How are your kids? How's it? Okay. Like I feel sometimes like there's such an urgency. Time is so short, and I think now with 4 kids, there was like running the company running the organization when that's what I was doing, and being a husband. And now there's lacrosse and dance and school lunches to pack and drop-offs and and all these things. So I think sometimes I get impatient. We'll sit in a meeting and I'll say that meeting could have been a third as short. Why is everybody using so many words? So I need to sometimes just be a little more relational and less transactional.
I think we can all lead into that. As soon as you pray that prayer, though, man, whoo, here comes traffic. Lord, make me patient. All right.
Patient.
Let's take a trip to the DMV.
More sincerely relational.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can sacrifice care in a relationship for the big mission and just go too fast, like Enneagram 8 all over. Like just kind of let's go. Let's do the thing. What's wrong? Like what took so long? Rather than, sometimes just
it's what makes you great.
Chilling out.
But all of our strengths can become our weaknesses.
But we read these books of a Steve Jobs or some of these titans that sacrifice so much for the mission, and they read as cautionary tales to me.
Me too.
I don't want to be the person that is steamrolling people to get what I want, even if it's the world with water. Water for the world. So
the means don't justify the end. I think when we're doing,
I don't want to be the guy who raised billions of dollars and helped hundreds of millions of kids, and have children of my own who say, "Well, Dad wasn't there for me. Missed this important event."
I think it's beautiful. I'm so grateful for you.
It's fun.
All
Thanks
my time
for
with you,
having me.
you've always been very, very relational, never ever transactional. And so let me encourage you from the outside in. But we're so grateful for you. Thank you for the life that you've lived. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for continuing 20 years in to endure, to believe for this. You inspire so many people. And I'm believing today that just through our conversation, people are learning a whole lot, hopefully getting involved, and hopefully just taking that little step of faith to grow in their own personal life as they are a part of solutions, not just sitting on the sidelines as a spectator. So Scott Harrison, everybody,
Thanks,
go
bro.
follow Charity Water. Leave us some comments. We'd love to hear some feedback. We are so grateful that you're taking some time with us. If you're with us an hour and 40 minutes, I just took my man's time. He might have missed his flight, but we're so grateful. Stay right here because there's always more things coming here on Mature Me. We love you guys.
This well is out of service. And when that happens, the people in this village have to stop what they're doing and walk really far to gather water from some pretty dubious sources, both day and night. There are dirty animals and scary animals and dangerous bacteria to avoid, not to mention that 5 gallons of water is really heavy. So when this well isn't flowing, life in the community is majorly disrupted. Now, drilling a new well and seeing it come gushing to life is an amazing thing. But keeping the taps flowing with reliably clean water takes a wide community of dedicated people that are willing to show up and help out whenever the need arises, like the Wahismai. They're a group of experts that have the tools and the skills to get the water flowing again. But for the Wahismai to show up, an even wider community of caring and generous people need to show up for them. Here at Charity Water, we call this global network of givers the Spring. They are the donors that chip in whatever they can each and every month toward the cause of making clean water accessible to all year long. 100% of monthly donations to the Spring go directly towards serving the water needs of more than 36,000 people around the world. These donations show up in the form of the materials, man-hours, training, education, sanitation, communication, and logistics that are all crucial in the effort to provide and maintain healthy water systems that can sustain generations of life. This reliable source of funding is critical to the Charity Water mission and represents the bedrock of hope that spurs on humanity's efforts to not just end the global water crisis, but to keep it ended for good. Join the spring. Give what you can, because showing up changes everything.